Hello, I apologize for being so late with this live. I was having technical difficulty. My other laptop crashed, so I have to use my husband. So I apologize for being late. So today we're going to be talking about organic pesticides. It's not pesticides, but organic fertilizers, the types that are available. And I'm going to be discussing the top 15, or it is at least considered the top 15 pesticides. I'm just going to silence my device. Okay, so there are many different types of organic fertilizers that is on the market, or you can find readily available, or you can create your own. So I will, as I go through the topics and I discuss the various type of fertilizers, I will not be giving you a brand name because one, I'm not marketing any type of fertilizers, and in addition to that, the brand that I may mention might not be available in your region. Oh, hi Russell. How is your gardening and worm farm going? Yes, so I won't be mentioning brands, but I will be giving you the type of fertilizers. I'll also be giving you the ratio of nitrogen to phosphorus to potassium that each of them contain, and a little bit more information on each of the various types. Now, oh hi Han White. As I give you the list of fertilizers that are available, and again, we're talking about organic fertilizers because I don't promote anything that is not organic. So as I give you the list, I'm also going to be mentioning a little details about each of these. And I'm going to be using expressions like immediate or fast release, slow release, or moderate release. So these refer to how quickly the plant nutrients is available from these types of fertilizers. So the first one we're going to start off with is the alfalfa meal. The alfalfa meal contains 2.5% nitrogen, 1% phosphorus, and 1.5% potassium. This compost very quickly in the soil, and it should be worked into your soil early in the spring, long before you're ready to start planting. This alfalfa meal, it slowly to moderately releases its nutrients. The second one is the bat guano, and it contains very high level of nitrogen. So it has 8% nitrogen, 6% phosphorus, but only 1% of potassium. And it's moderately to immediate release of nutrients. The plants absorb these nutrients rather quickly, therefore it is used between planting seasons or between plant rotations. The other type of guano, called the bird guano, has more nutrients than the bat guano, and the seabird guano is available only in some parts of the world. Fish emulsion is the third type of organic fertilizer that you can purchase. It contains 9% of nitrogen. Hi, Her Healthy Home. Yes, so the fish emulsion contains 9% nitrogen. It doesn't have any phosphorus or potassium in it, it releases its nutrients immediately. And when it says that any type of fertilizer is fast or immediate release, it means that the nutrients is readily available within hours of it being applied to the soil. If it says that it moderately releases its nutrients, then it means that the nutrients is available within days. When it says that it slowly releases its nutrients, then it means that it takes weeks for that type of fertilizer to be absorbed by the plants. Now, fish emulsion is very ideal for when you want to increase the foliage of your plants because, as I mentioned, it does not really have any phosphorus nor potassium in there. So when your plants need a nitrogen boost, fish emulsion work well. So, and if you have plants that are nitrogen loving, fish emulsion work well for these. But there's one thing that you need to consider though when if you're going to be using fish emulsion is the fact that it is acidic slightly, but it is acidic. So you have to be careful when you're using it around some of your plants because there are plants that does not necessarily like acidic environment. So keep that in mind. So you might have to do a little research if you're already not familiar with the type of pH that your plants prefer. So you might have to do a little research to make sure that you're using fish emulsion around the right plant. Would you say casting is slow in releasing its nutrients? Yes, it is slow releasing. The thing about the worm casting is that, as I mentioned in, I think that was last Friday's live, it is encapsulated by oils that are in the alimentary canal of the worms. And so the castings take a while to break down fully. But the good thing about it is that from the moment you add it to the soil, it starts to break down. So it's not that it's unlike other compost or organic fertilizer that actually takes a while before it actually releases the nutrients. That is not necessarily the case with the worm casting. With the worm casting, immediately it starts releasing its nutrients. But because it takes 2 months for this oil that coats the worm casting to break down, so the nutrients is readily available, but not all of the nutrients, not all at once. So from the moment you apply it to your soil, your plants start getting the nutrients, but it takes 2 months for all of that nutrients to be used up. Russell says 3 weeks the garden gets planted, and I'll kick the gears down and start driving the ANC like a Nissan 300 ZX on the Autobahn. Okay, 3 more weeks and you're ready to go, eh? All excited. Okay, good. Yeah, so I'm pretty excited too. In 2 weeks, I can actually start putting my warm weather crops outdoors. But I think I'm gonna be waiting for as I said before, my peppers and tomatoes and sweet potatoes that really love the heat or prefer the heat. I'm going to be waiting until June to put those out. But anything else that can go out, I think I'm gonna be putting them out as soon as the growing season start. Would you say it is the same for worm tea? For worm tea, not necessarily, because once you create the worm tea and it is in that water, it is going to start breaking down the oil more readily. So the nutrients would be readily available more for the worm tea than for the straight worm castings. Okay, so the fourth type of organic fertilizer is cottonseed meal. And this one contains 6% nitrogen, 3% phosphorus, and 1% potassium. This one is also a slow release. It is readily available wherever cotton is grown. So the cottonseed meal is readily available where cotton is grown. It is more ideal to be used at the end of your growing season or just before winter. Now, if added to the soil, before a cover crop or mulch is added, then this will actually enrich your soil with nitrogen for the next growing season. The fifth one is corn gluten meal. This does not contain any nitrogen or phosphorus, but it does contain 1% potassium, and it slowly releases its nutrients. Let's see. And wife says, okay, because I fed my raised beds on containers worm tea last Thursday. Okay. Now your plants are gonna be happy and love you for the worm tea. Yes, so the corn fertilizer is often used as a late season or winter prep additive, and it will help to stabilize the soil over the winter. The sixth one is the seaweed fertilizer. Let's see. I'm not so sure which plant specifically would benefit from it, but I know that the corn gluten meal is very good for plants whenever you have a potassium deficiency. So like that video that I did last week where my peppers and it was my comfrey that was suffering from a potassium deficiency, and I show where I was actually creating the worm tea because it contains a good level of potassium. So plants that have potassium deficiency would benefit greatly from this. So the way you identify plants that are in need of more potassium is that the leaves start to turn golden brown around the edges, and then the edges will get dark, and then close to that dark area will become golden brown until all of the leaf is like that. And the leaf tends to stay on the plant even after the leaf has dried down, and then eventually it will fall off. But yes, so that is how you identify when your plants have a potassium deficiency. And then when you see that, then the corn gluten meal would work pretty well for that. Seaweed is the next type of organic fertilizer, and it contains 1% nitrogen, 2% phosphorus, and 5% worm, sorry, worm, 5% potassium. It releases its nutrients very fast. This is also a great source of zinc and iron. And if you live by the sea, then you can easily harvest it. Otherwise, you will have to purchase your seaweed fertilizer. Now, plants such as cereal grains and others that love potassium will benefit greatly from this type of fertilizer as well. Let's see. And White says, okay, that's what I wanted to know. Thank you. Okay, you're welcome. So the sixth one is chicken manure. And the chicken manure contains 3.5% nitrogen. It contains 1.5% phosphorus and 1.5% potassium. This also is a very fast releasing fertilizer. And like the cow manure, this is often used when crops need a quick boost. And this is often used after harvest or before you start planting. Hi, Growing with Jay. I'm going to try foliage feeding with kelp. Okay, that's a nice one too. It's not on my list, but that's a nice one too. Just a minute here. Okay, so let's get back on track. I just had to respond to that. So, on white, I'm going to give you a little bit of work to do for me at the moment. Just, I think it will take just a few minutes, if so much. But that information that you sent me today, can you put the link on the screen or text it to me? Yes. Text me that link, please, because I'm trying to find it here, but it seemed as if I did not save it. Okay. So the next one that we're going to look at, I've never heard of this one before, but it came up in the research. Hi, Leafy Wiggy. Kelp meal is the most expensive fertilizer I need. Hoping to find a deal somewhere. Yeah, if you were somewhere close to Russell, Russell probably would be able to help you to find it because he seemed to be somewhere where he can get a whole lot of deals on everything he needs for his worm and garden. But in our region here, it is so difficult to find things that are reasonable. Yes, it's too bad for us. Okay, so the next type of fertilizer is the green sand, and it contains 1% nitrogen, 1% phosphorus, and 1% potassium. This also moderately releases its nutrients. Now, the green sand is just grounded green limestone. It is a shallow marine sediment that is full of nutrients that are found in lakes and in the oceans. The amount of nutrients that is found in the green sand fertilizer is dependent, of course, on where the sand is sourced from. The ninth one is compost. Most people are familiar with that one. And sometimes compost can be readily available because you can create it in your own yard. Some people create it even inside their kitchen or somewhere in their basement, but you can create it in your house or outdoors. There are some who are not really able to compost the one, so they will have to purchase compost. And if they don't want to go that route where they're purchasing compost, then they can always just put the food scraps or the leftover residue from their garden into the garden or into their containers, the potting containers. Yes, so compost is the next one. It contains 2% nitrogen, 1.5% potassium, and 1.5% of phosphorus. And this one moderately releases its nutrients as well. Okay, you sent the information. Thank you very much. Yes. Now, the number of NPK, which is your nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium, that is in compost depend on what your compost is made of, because compost can be made of animal droppings, it can be made plant-based, it can be made from kitchen scraps combined with browns and greens. Sometimes it is made from just brown, sometimes it is made from just greens. So the amount of nutrients, NPK, that is actually in your compost is dependent on what your compost is made of. Compost tend to be alkaline in nature. So if you have acidic soil and you want to kind of neutralize it, then adding compost to your soil works pretty well. Now it is added either before you plant, during the growing season while plants have been planted already, or after you have harvested. Now if you have, oh hi Melanie, if you have rough compost, then you can use it as a mulch. Soya bean meal is the next one. Yes, so soya bean meal is the next type of fertilizer that you can purchase. And this contains 3% of nitrogen, 5% of, no, sorry, 0.5% of phosphorus, and 2.5% of potassium. This also is one that moderately releases its nutrients. Now, how this is absorbed is dependent on the conditions, but in general, it is a good additive for long lasting results, especially if you are doing soil maintenance. The next one is blood meal, perfect for nitrogen boost. It contains 12% nitrogen. So far of all of the organic fertilizers that we have looked at, bone meal so far contains the most nitrogen. It has 12% nitrogen, 1.5% phosphorus, and 2.5%. Wake up, Marsha, wake up. I know I'm exhausted. Yes, but it contains 1.5% phosphorus and 0.5% potassium. It releases its nutrients very fast. It is acidic in nature, so you have to be careful. It's a great boost for nitrogen loving plants. And this you just simply pour around the root of your plants and then cover the roots with mulch. Let's see, Russell says brown algae that booms in river slouch and oxbows can be netted and used as a substitute for kelp. Not the green algae, the brown algae. Okay, thanks for sharing that information. That's good information to know, and so I will jot it down. Expose.
And results?
This one is working.
So you're on here now?
Yes.
Okay.
Thanks. Okay, here. My laptop crashed today. I have too much information on it, so it crashed, which is why my live was late. So I'm using my husband's laptop, so that's why he's here checking to see if all is well. Okay. Okay, so the next one is bone meal. Bone meal contains 4% nitrogen, 20% phosphorus. So when your plants really need phosphorus, this bone meal is the best way to go because it has 20% of phosphorus and it does not contain any potassium. It moderately releases its nutrients, and this is good for soil that needs to be seriously amended. So when your soil routinely shows that it is lacking in phosphorus or that it needs to be amended, then you need to add bone meal to it. So if your soil contains on a continuous basis a high level of nitrogen that is resulting in nitrogen burn in your plants, then adding bone meal works pretty well in combating this problem. Okay, so the 13th one is feather meal. It is also another rich source of nitrogen. So similar to the blood meal, it contains 12% of nitrogen. It contains no phosphorus nor potassium. It moderately releases its nutrients and is ideal for new nitrogen loving plants or if your plants need a boost of nitrogen. So this you're going to be adding to your soil before you actually start planting. Okay, you recently buy a bag of bone meal. Good. I've never really purchased bone meal, but starting last year, I started making my own bone meal. So sometimes my hubby get mad at me because the fridge is just full of bones every time they eat. I'm like, don't throw away your bones. Remember not to throw away your bones. So I've been making my own bone meal and then using it, crush it and use it in my garden. So if you are interested in making your own bone meal, then I have videos on how to go about doing so, so you can check that out. And I think if I can recall, the title is how to make your own bone meal or something to that effect. Okay, there is a bit of information that I need to share with you. Yes, so the information that I am giving you today about these various type of fertilizers, it is found at, let's see where the link is. Yes, so if you want the link, I'm going to be adding it to the description section of the video, but I wasn't able to add any description because, as I mentioned before, my laptop crashed and then I'm using my husband, so I ran out of time. So I didn't get to add a description to this live broadcast. So later on, I'm going to go back and add a description to it so you can find this information that I'm sharing with you. You can find where I was able to source this information because I know that as the growing season start, a lot of people are going to need information. They're going to be looking for information on what type of fertilizers they can get. So I'm going to leave the link so you can go back and look for it. Okay, so the next one is fish meal. Fish meal is another one that is high in nitrogen. It's not as high as the feather meal or the bone meal, but it has 10% nitrogen, 5% phosphorus, and 4% potassium. This one releases its nutrients very fast, and it is ideal when you want a balanced boost of both nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium. So you will notice that most of the fertilizers here that I mentioned, they tend to have high levels of one thing and then very little, if any, of other stuff, the NPK. These fertilizers also contain other types of nutrients, but the focus is on the nitrogen, potassium, and the phosphorus, since as those are the ones that are the primary nutrients that plants need. So yes, some of them will have a higher level in one thing than the other. Let's see. Melanie says, oh, that's a great idea. Okay. And Anwhite says, which one would you say is best? Actually, I would not really say any is better than the other because I'm going to be discussing a little bit further in the discussion pretty soon, actually, why I would not say one is better than the other because they can have different applications. Okay, so the 15th one and the final one is the worm castings. What's going on here? Okay, all right, good. Yes, so that one is worm castings, and the worm casting contain 5% of the well, worm casting for sure definitely has all of the nutrients that your plants need. It has trace minerals in small amount of trace minerals. You notice I'm a bit distracted today. Yes, it has trace minerals. I have to go to work when my live is finished, so I'm doing a little bit of communication here, which is why I seem to be distracted. Yeah, so sorry about that. So it has all of the nutrients that your plants need, but the amount of trace minerals that your plants need is in very, very small amounts. So sometimes you might have to top up your plants if you're using worm castings, but it contains, there are various types of various percentage of nutrients that the worm casting has, and it's dependent on, similar to the compost, what your worms are fed. But unlike with the compost, worms, when they eat the food scraps, irrespective of what you feed your worms, when the worms eat it, their bodies will actually break it down into the type of, into the plant nutrients that your plants are going to need. So unlike compost and others, the worm body actually breaks the food down and turn it into the plant nutrients. So according to the information that I have here, it says that it has a ratio of 3.2 nitrogen, 1.1% phosphorus, and 1.5 potassium. Other research that I've done before says that it has 5% nitrogen, 3% of potassium, not potassium, but phosphorus. And I don't remember how much the potassium level was, but the amount that it contained varies according to what the worms are being fed or was fed. That is my favorite, worm castings. Okay, and white. That is my favorite as well. So I use a combination of compost and worm castings, although you don't necessarily have to use both. What would be the best for potatoes? That's a good question, and it's honestly one I cannot answer at all. I don't know. I don't know the answer to that because I'm not big on growing potatoes. Just last year, I think, the previous year, that was what, 2019 was the first time I attempted to grow potatoes. They didn't do so well, and the only thing I had it was compost. But then I didn't really know how to care for potatoes. I still don't really know fully how well to take care of potatoes. I don't really know what they need. So I don't know how to answer that one. Last year I had a little better success with potatoes, but this year is my actual first attempt at really growing potatoes. So I don't really know yet. I'm going to have to research that because I really want a nice harvest of it, especially since I'm growing my favorite type of potatoes this time around. I have some rosettes that I planted today. So I'm going to have to research that one. Let's see. Russell says, I use fish emulsion or fish hydrolysate, whatever is on hand, 4 hours before using casting tea, 15 to 20 milliliters or 15 gallons of brew tea. Not for fertilizer effect, but to multiply the microorganism. Okay, that's a nice method. Interesting. Okay, so worm casting slowly releases the nutrients, as I mentioned before. It is ideal for seed germination and for pesticide, especially if you're using it as a worm tea. It's good as a pesticide. It's good for amending your soil, provide plant nutrients. So this you can add before, during, and after planting. So these are the 15 top organic fertilizers that I have listed here. So what type of fertilizer do you use in your garden? As I just mentioned, I use worm castings and compost. Those are the only types of fertilizers. Well, not quite. I do use the bone meal. Yes, I do use the bone meal, but I don't really use a lot of it. So I do use the bone meal, but only in small amount. Let's see. Christine Trom. I hope I pronounced that last name right. Any update on the regrow broccoli challenge? I was thinking of doing an update on it today. I am kind of behind with recording my videos because I have a little project away from home that I'm working on. So it has been a very crazy week, but I'm going to be doing an update on it pretty soon. Before the week done, I will give an update on it. Melanie says, I use Miracle Grow. Okay. Yes, that one is readily available here, but it's not one that I use. Oh, hi, Eric. Haven't seen you in a while. How are you doing? How is school? Let's see. And White says, I use worm casting, compost, and banana liquid fertilizer. Yes, that's a nice combination on White. Eric says, it's nice to see you live. It's nice to hear from you too, Eric. I haven't heard from you in a while. I guess school has been pretty busy. Eh? I did see your last video though that you did with that custard. Yeah. I never thought about making custard without using egg. So that was a pretty interesting one. I learned something new. Oh, you said, gosh, Auntie, school is so full working on some projects. Okay, they're keeping you quite busy. That's good still. Get to learn a lot. Yeah, so have you guys ever used any of the fertilizers that I mentioned here? And if so, what are your views on it? What is it that you like about it? And if there's anything you don't like, what is it that you don't like? Oh, Eric says that custard was good. Okay. I'm gonna try it one day if I can find custard powder. Eric, your mom ate it all? Oh, well, I guess next time you're making it, you're gonna have to hide it from her so you can get some of it. Yeah. Yeah, so the question I was asking is, have you used any of the fertilizers that's mentioned here, and what is your views on it? And why it says yes, she's used the worm castings. Yeah, I've used the worm castings, and before worm casting, I was using just compost, Gaia Green organic fertilizer for me. Okay. Yes, I've never really used that one. It's only since I started coming on this live that I get familiar with that there is such a fertilizer. And I think I wrote it down last week saying I'm going to look it up, but I never got the chance. Nothing that I said I would look up last week, I haven't gotten the chance to do because I'm just too busy at the moment. I don't know when I'm going to have time. I'm actually falling behind even with planting the things that can be planted outdoors. So I'm cramming at the moment. I feel like I'm preparing for an exam. Yeah, so I've used compost, only compost prior to producing worm castings, and I actually have no complaints about the compost. It works pretty well. My crops seem to be better. I've never used not organic, but inorganic fertilizers. I've never used that in my entire life. So I don't really have anything to compare from personal experience where inorganic fertilizer compared to organic. I'll just have to go based on information that I gather from others regarding that. But I'm pretty comfortable with using just compost. But now that I have worm casting and I learn of the benefits of worm castings, even acting as a pesticide and the ability for it to slowly release its nutrients for 2 months and stuff like that, helping with germination, definitely I will stick to worm castings. I'm still gonna play around with some of these fertilizers, but I'm not going to give up on my worm castings. So, like, sometimes my plants might need an extra boost of nitrogen or whatever, so I might choose to use a little blood meal, but worm casting is the one I'm going to be sticking with. Melanie says, I started to make some comfort tea. I have to wait 6 weeks before it's ready. Okay, nice. Yes, I still have my comfrey indoors. Haven't planted it outdoors yet. I haven't had the time to research when is the best time to put it outdoors because it's the first time I'm going to be growing comfrey in my region. And since as I only have one plant out of the two remaining, and since I got them at the end of the growing season last year. I gave away one of the plants, and I don't know if it is because the container is so small, but it has not sent up any suckers. So the one that I have, I'm just nurturing it indoors until I know it is safe to put it outside. So I need to do some research on how to grow it and what it's gonna require because comfrey send roots as deep as 4 feet down into the soil. I haven't I know where I'm going to plant it outdoors, but I haven't prepared the soil for it yet because I don't know what type of soil it requires. Let's see. Christine says, I have an ant problem in my garden. What do you recommend? Okay, I just did a video on that last week. Well, the video wasn't focused on getting rid of ants in your garden, but it touched on that. So, some say coffee grounds is good. I've never tried that. Cornmeal is very good, but the challenge with cornmeal, if you don't want to see more ants in your garden, then you might not want to use the cornmeal because ants do love cornmeal, so they will come and eat it. But it's going to attract more ants to your garden, but when they eat it, the cornmeal will swell within them. They cannot digest it. So because they cannot digest it, they will constantly feel full, so they won't be eating anymore. And this will result in their death. Or you can use diatomaceous earth, because the particles will cut into the exoskeleton of the ant and will cause the ant to gradually dehydrate and eventually die. Cinnamon does not kill the ants, but it repels them. The thing with cinnamon is that once you water your garden, the smell of the cinnamon goes away. So you're going to have to keep topping up with the cinnamon. So an option we're using the cinnamon is to put it on the perimeter of your garden. Most things, household products that you use in your kitchen that has really strong smell repels ants. Let's see. Eric says, okay, Auntie, hope to see you again. I'm finishing up some homework. Okay, it was nice talking to you again, Eric. Lots and lots of love. Okay, same to you. Russell says, it is worms that allow me to throw NPK out the windows. NPK is something I wish I never taught, because it is totally unnecessary and it turns soil into dirt. It does? Oh, see, I didn't know that. Yes, but when you buy fertilizers, a lot of them suggest a ratio of 10-10-10 or 20-20-20. That's a high amount. Worm casting doesn't have that high amount of NPK, but yet still the plants grow very well using worm casting. So yes, I can see where you're coming from with that. And even compost does contain even less NPK than worm castings. And when I was growing up, my grandfather never used anything in his farm other than fertilizer. And I'm not talking about a backyard garden. My grandfather was a farmer. And the only thing he used in his garden was compost, and he had such healthy crops. People always talk about his produce because they were always, the taste is better, the size of the produce is amazing. So people always talk about my grandfather's crop, and the only thing he used in his garden is compost. And he didn't create a compost pile the way we do now. All he would do is, whenever he harvests things from his garden or from his farm, everything gets thrown back in the farm. That is all he did. And he had a really, really healthy crop. So a lot of the things that are said to be needed are not necessarily needed, but I can see where you're coming from, where the NPK ratio is concerned. And White says, the one that you gave me has sent out a baby comfrey. Oh my goodness. Really? That's nice. That's nice. You're welcome, Christine. Honestly, and White says, but I'm having problem with aphids on the little young leaves. Oh, hopefully you'll be able to get that under control quickly. Did you get the neem oil? Because if you got the neem oil, then you could just spray it on there, make your solution and spray it on there and try to get rid of those aphids. So do any of you on the live use organic, or what type of garden do you grow? Do you grow organic or inorganic garden? I know some of you definitely grow organic garden, but is there anyone that grows inorganic garden? I can see NPK deficiencies in plants and fix it with NPK with worms. I don't see deficiency in the first place. Okay, well, that's good. That's very good. Um, I have been having a bit of deficiency recently with the indoor plants, and it is because I am kind of neglecting them. Most of the time, all I have time to do is just water them. So they haven't been getting the care that they're supposed to be getting. So I'm going to have to step up the pace, even if it means that I'm going to be working late into the night to get everything done. Because these days, I don't stop. I get up in the morning and I start working, and I don't stop working until 10 in the evenings. So I might have to work until 11 if I'm going to be taking care of my plants properly. But I'm just waiting for the growing season to start officially and get the plants outside, because once I get the plants planted outside, then I don't have to be worrying about plants in house, the plants in the garden, and the plants in the garage, because everything will be in the same location. It will make it a whole lot easier. But then everything in time, I just have to make sure that I keep the plants alive until I can get them outdoors. See? Okay, and White says, yes, I have been treating it, so it is not too bad now. Just have to keep on top of it. Yes, definitely. And those creatures, most of the garden pests that we have, those the insect types, they tend to reproduce every week, or at least their larva is hatching weekly. So, in order to maintain them, we have to make sure that we apply our pesticide on a weekly basis. It's recommended every 5 to 7 days consistently in order to keep them under control. Let's see, Growing with Jay says, I grow mostly organic, but I'm not opposed to synthetic if organic is not giving me the results I need. But organic is always my first and the second choice. Okay. And wife says, I'm growing an organic vegetable and herb garden in containers and 2 garden storage container as raised beds. Okay, nice. Yeah, I've never really used inorganic fertilizers because my grandfather's experience taught me that it's not necessary. And then some of the inorganic fertilizers tend to be very salt based, and the salt will harden your soil if you use it for an extended period of time. It will harden your soil, and even if you continue to add it to your soil, your plants will not be able to absorb the nutrients even though you put the nutrients in the soil, because the salt make it difficult for the plants to absorb the nutrients. So if you use inorganic fertilizer, and depending on which type you use, some is worse than others, then over a period of time, your soil will become barren. So it's not a good idea to just use inorganic fertilizers. I think in my region in Saskatchewan, I'm hearing that a lot of farmers now are having serious issues with that, because they use a lot of inorganic fertilizers. Some of them are organic farmers, so because of that, over they've been doing that for decades. So their soil now is having difficulty producing proper foods for them. Let's see. Leafy Wiggy says, I even grow my flowers organic. Nice, yes. I like to treat the birds and the beneficial insects well. That's very good, Leafy Wiggy. We have to take care of the insects and the birds, beneficial ones, that is, because some of those insects need to go. Yes, but we have to take care of them because they are helping us with our crop production as well. They're helping to pollinate, they're helping to control the pests in the garden. So we have to treat them well, because sometimes we might think that we're doing this all on our own, but everything in nature is in a symbiotic relationship. We cannot exist without each other. So it's nice that you're treating your plants organically as well. Okay, Russell says it's called nutrients lockout. Okay, yeah, I didn't know that, but good. Yes, so regarding the 15 types of fertilizers that we have discussed, you will notice that some of these fertilizers have a very high level of one or two types of primary nutrients and low in one or more other types of nutrients. So, when choosing the type of fertilizer that you're going to use, it is a good idea to know the type of plants that you're growing, what type of nutrients they require. So, things that are heavy feeders, if you know that some plants love a lot of potassium, then you're going to go for the type of fertilizer that has a lot of potassium in there. If you know that you have plants that are nitrogen lovers, then you're going to look for fertilizers that are high, very high in nitrogen. So know the plants, but then also consider the acidity of the fertilizer you're getting and what type of pH your plants like. Because, for example, your blood meal is said to be acidic, and some of your plants might prefer a neutral pH. So you wouldn't want to use a blood meal around your plants that has a neutral pH. So you have to take things like these into consideration. Some fertilizers might have just phosphorus, and you might notice your plants have a phosphorus deficiency. If that is the case, then a fertilizer that just has phosphorus but not nitrogen and potassium, you want to go with that. Same for the nitrogen, same for the potassium or the phosphorus. So know the needs of your plants and get your fertilizers based on that. If you don't notice any deficiency in your plants, then go for a balanced NPK. So the worm casting is a nice one where that is concerned. Your compost is a nice one where that is concerned. Fish meal is a nice one where balance is concerned. So again, know the appearance of your plants or the needs of your plants, and that is going to help you to make a good decision as to what type of fertilizers you need. Sometimes you might need to get more than one type of fertilizers because if you are growing things like lettuces and cabbages, you're growing that for the foliage, right? Your battery is running low, but it's plugged in. Okay, so you would go for, so if you have plants that love nitrogen and it's low, so you're going to stick to the fertilizers that love nitrogen. And you have to keep things like that in mind. Oh, my thoughts are thrown off because I just got some information pop up on my screen saying that my battery is running low, even though it is plugged in. I don't know why it is running low. But anyway, yes. So know the type of plants you have and what they need and buy fertilizers accordingly. So sometimes you might have to buy one that is very rich in nitrogen for one set of plants. Sometimes you might have to buy one that is very rich in phosphorus for another set of plants. So yes, do your research, and that will help you to know what type of fertilizers to get and if you need to get more than one type of fertilizers. But of course, to eliminate having to buy various types of fertilizers, you can always just go with worm casting or compost. Yes, so as it is saying that my battery is pretty low, I'm going to have to end the live pretty soon. I also have to get to work. So I am a bit behind time because I started the live late. I wanted also to do a live on types of organic pesticides. So that is going to be next week's discussion. Yes. So If there are no other comments, I'm going to say goodbye to you guys. It was fun talking with you, and I hope to see you again on Friday. So, the live that I just mentioned that we're going to be having about the pesticide will be on Monday, because Monday is for gardening lives, and then Friday we'll be doing a worm farming live. Yeah, so I'll just wait a bit to see if there's any comments, and if not, then I will end the live. Okay, take care, Leafy Wiggy. Oh, it's a good thing I'm ending the live. I'm getting hungry. I haven't had the chance to have supper. It's been a pretty busy, overwhelming day today, and it's not done yet. Okay, same to you, Russell. Have a great week. Okay, so bye everyone. Stay safe. And yeah, man, it's time to grow. Bye, Melanie. Oh, I'm gonna call you Melissa. Yeah, so take care, guys, and I hope to see you again on Friday at 12 noon. Well, that's based on my time. So here we go.